Hello all. In this video, I wanted to talk about my experience living in Minnesota. So Minnesota is my home state. I was born here and I grew up here. Yeah, I'm from here. I do not have deep roots here though. My mom's side of the family is from Pennsylvania. My dad's side of the family is from Virginia, basically. They moved here for jobs and things like that. So yeah, I have some family all over, but yeah, most of my family is on the East Coast still. But I'm a Minnesotan. I grew up in the suburbs. I've lived in Minneapolis for a while now. I've kind of been all over. So in Minnesota, we have the main metropolitan area, which we call the Twin Cities. So yeah, that consists of two cities, St. Paul, which is the actual capital of Minnesota, and then Minneapolis. Both St. Paul and Minneapolis they're both medium-sized cities. People say Minneapolis is where all the fun stuff happens, but yeah, I don't know. I like both St. Paul and Minneapolis for different reasons, but yeah, I think I like St. Paul a little bit better. I like the architecture in St. Paul better. It seems more historic. There's like a European influence. You also have the Mississippi River, which runs around the edge of the city, which is I think is just gorgeous. The Mississippi River also goes through Minneapolis as well. Minneapolis seems more modern, more trendy, but yeah, there's also, there's arts, there's a couple theaters, there's orchestra. Minneapolis also has more of a nightlife. There's clubs, there's also the sports stadiums, and there's quite a few lakes, water activities. To me, St. Paul is more historic. It reminds me more of the East Coast, whereas Minneapolis is kind of like Seattle or Portland, Oregon. So the people and the culture, it's definitely Midwestern in the city, suburbs. Once you get outside of that, more rural area, it's more generic rural. It's more like American Northwestern more than, Midwest. So yeah, I don't feel like Minnesota is the heart of the Midwest because I kind of get like the culture of the American Northwest more so. And the cities, there's definitely like the trendy hipster thing. There's something called Minnesota Nice, which is like kind of like fake nice, kind of like passive nice. It seems like, oh, this person doesn't really want to be nice. They're just, faking it, that kind of thing. So there's a variety of different types of people, but there's definitely a theme of like people seeming a bit uptight or standoffish to me. So yeah, I don't really care about that sort of thing that much, but yeah, when I traveled down to like Texas and to the South, people seemed a lot more like pleasant. They seemed like more like there's something called Southern hospitality. So yeah, I definitely get where that saying is coming from. It's definitely different here in Minnesota. You have a lot of people who aren't as open and friendly. Which again, to me, I don't really pay attention or mind that sort of thing either way. But yeah, that was definitely something I noticed when I went to, Texas and the South down there. Is the demeanor of the people was different I don't know, they just seem more friendly in the South to me. So I don't really feel like there's anything that stands out about the culture. Most of the people here are descendants of from Germany and Scandinavia. It's a little bit different from the rest of the US, but I don't feel like that had much of an influence on culture or anything like that. Yeah, it just kind of seems Midwestern and Northwest American. You know, living in Minneapolis, I've been to, you know, quite a few cities. The city it reminds me most of, you know, as far as culture and people, is definitely Seattle and Portland, Oregon. The rest of the state is a bit more laid back outside of the cities. You know, I definitely don't see that like hipster, trendy culture. So, you know, style, you know, there's a lot of girly pops with like pixie style, like pixie short haircut, you know, layered, looks kind of like hipster, kind of punk, you know. Same for the guys, you know, you have some guys out here that have like punk style, maybe they have some tattoos, you know, that kind of thing, you know. Other than that, you know, nothing crazy out here, nothing special, just kind of like laid back, generic type of thing. That's the main thing I've seen, but yeah, you know, it's easy to fit in here. There's, you know, good amount of jobs. The prices here aren't the cheapest, but I'd say it's pretty decent for a city. There's, you know, a lot to do, so yeah, I'm gonna say the Twin Cities definitely has its own thing going on. You can definitely make a living out here, you know, save up some money easier than a lot of other major US cities. So outside of the Twin Cities, the major cities we have in Minnesota is St. Cloud, right at central Minnesota. Just a nice little, it's got a big town feel. And then there's Rochester. So Rochester is in the southern east of Minnesota. So yeah, Rochester is known for its hospitals, basically. There's Mayo Clinic, which is the largest employer in Minnesota and consistently ranked as a top U.S. hospital. Minnesota is known as a national and global leader in medicine, and the education system here in general is top tier, I would say. You know, I would say Minnesota is a good place for kids and families, that kind of thing. And then there is Duluth. So Duluth is my favorite city in Minnesota. It's a very scenic city. It sits right on the coast of Lake Superior, which is just beautiful. There's a couple of attractions up there in Duluth, you know, not much, but yeah, after, you know, here in Minnesota, like there's the art museums, which I really like. There's also the History Museum of Minnesota in St. Paul, which I really enjoyed the couple of times I went there. I just love history, but yeah, there's a haunted mansion in Duluth. Supposedly it's haunted. A millionaire used to live there, but yeah, you can tour that mansion. There's also a ship. You can tour a haunted ship, you know, that used to sail the Great Lake Superior. There's a really nice aquarium as well in Duluth, which teaches you about the fauna of the Great Lakes. We also have an aquarium here in the Twin Cities in Bloomington. It's actually in the basement of the Mall of America. So yeah, we also have the Mall of America in Bloomington. It's just outside the Twin Cities. It's one of the largest, or supposed to be the largest mall in the US. I don't know, but yeah. The Mall of America also has a theme park right in the middle of it. It's called Nickelodeon Universe. So yeah, it's got roller coasters, a Ferris wheel, bumper cars, things that you find in a typical amusement park. So yeah, that's really cool. We do have a couple of interesting things up here. We also have Minnehaha Falls. It's a little waterfall, you know. But what's interesting about it is that it gets so cold up here in Minnesota that in the winter, it'll freeze solid. So it's really an interesting sight when the Minnehaha Falls freezes solid. I've been on a few road trips as well, which I really appreciated that I was able to see, the just of the landscape of Minnesota. So I've been through southern Minnesota, I've been up through central, going up northern. I've also gone central hard north, and I've also gone on what is called Minnesota North Shore Scenic Drive. So I went from Minneapolis up to Grand Marais, Minnesota, driving on the coast of Lake Superior. So, I got to see a bit of the varied landscapes of Minnesota. The central interior part is mostly flat, what they call plains, prairies, that type of thing, lots of farmland. The more northern part of Minnesota is a little bit different. So if you go, hard north, you get to what is called Lake of the Woods. There's also Voyageurs National Park. So yeah, up there it's really interesting. There's some wetlands, like a little bit marshy. It's still kind of flat like plains, but yeah, there's some hills up there. It's a bit more hilly, and it's like rocky hills. So it's kind of almost like mountain ranges a little bit, but not on such a big scale. Yeah, and you can see the northern lights up there, So yeah, gorgeous wetlands. And then there's the Canadian border up there. So when I was up there, I thought there's a road that goes right on the Canadian border. I thought, it was amazing to see, a whole other country on the other side of the road there. You could look like there were some houses and farms over there. So yeah, I thought that was cool. So the northeastern part of Minnesota is more wooded. There's a national forest up there, and it's also a bit more hilly and rocky. There's the Iron Ranges up there. So yeah, I like it. I've been camping up there before. I've been camping at a few places in Minnesota. I've also been camping at Otter Tail Lake, which is a really big lake in Minnesota. You can also see like the landscape of Minnesota. There's prairies, it's like on a prairie land. So yeah, I like that. And that's the other thing. Minnesota is known as the land of 10,000 lakes. So yeah, there's a lot of lakes up here. I've been to the largest lake in Minnesota, which was just like, it was amazing. Like there was a certain experience to it. It's actually on a Native American reservation. So yeah, it was definitely different from any other big lake I've been to. But yeah, I've been to a few of the big lakes up here. I think my favorite is Lake Minnetonka, right here outside the Twin Cities. I like how it's an uneven lake, and then I also like, the Lake of the Woods, Voyageurs, how there's like plots of land, like islands, kind of like in the lake. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Bordering Wisconsin, you kind of like have these rocky, hilly ranges, so that's different from the rest of Minnesota, which is pretty flat. On that note, we also have the weather. I feel like the weather in Minnesota is a bit off. Like right now, we're in the dead of summer. So summer in Minnesota is a bit much to me. I think it's because of the humidity. Like, I think the humidity makes it a bit uncomfortable for me, and it's also the fact it seems like the summer is long. Like, it seems like spring is really short, and spring can be kind of like on the cool side, you know? And then fall seems kind of short as well, because like we still have warm days in October, but then all of a sudden it'll get, it can get really cold. So it kind of seems like there's two major seasons here. There's summer and winter. So yes, there's spring, but it's not very long. And yes, there's fall, but that mostly seems cold. Nice fall weather is not that long. Yeah, we do have the four seasons. We have, flowers blooming around springtime, May, whatever. And then we have the leaves turning orange, some nice cool days in October. But yeah, I feel like November, December, January, February, March, April is just cold. And then, we have a few days that are, nice and in between, a couple weeks or whatever. And then it's just hot. So, yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that. And the winters can be pretty extreme. Minnesota is one of the top coldest states in the continental U.S. after North Dakota. It can get pretty cold here. I've seen it get like -60, but yeah, more common. Very cold temperatures like -5, something like that. Sometimes it'll go down to like -20, -40. It can get pretty cold. So when it snows here, sometimes it just hangs around the whole winter. And it'll just keep piling on top of each other. But yeah, extreme weather doesn't really bother me that much. I don't really mind that it gets very, very cold here, very, very wintry. I think the thing with the summer here is, I guess I just don't like the humidity, because it makes it feel like uncomfortable, because it can be 100 degrees in Las Vegas. Like, I've been in Las Vegas, in the desert, and it's like 110 degrees and I'm fine. I'm like, it's not that bad. But it's like dry heat, so it's more comfortable for me. We have 4 seasons here: cold, long winters, but you think that the summers would be a bit nicer. Sometimes they are, but it gets pretty hot up here. Summer gets up to 90 degrees, and that's usually the normal hot. It can definitely get hotter, like I've seen it like 100, whatever, but like the normal hot is like around 90 degrees. Like, it'll be like 89, 93, like that's usually what I see. But yeah, you would think that since the winters are so cold, we would have, more comfortable summer, not so hot, maybe like 80 degrees, but that's not the case. Yeah, the winters in Minnesota can be bad. It's not called Minnesota for no reason. It can get very cold here, to the point where it can be unsafe or pose, risks related to it being really cold. So yeah, that's something that you want to keep in mind. If it's like 20 degrees or 10 degrees or something, I layer. I have thermal leggings, thermal socks. It's like, you don't want to get like hypothermia or frostbite or something like that, which can happen when it gets very, very cold. So yeah, long, bad winter, if you want to look at it that way. I don't really look at it that way. It's just par for the course. I like winter weather, you know, snow, all that stuff. But yeah, we do have normal southern summer weather that people like. So overall, you know, I love the Midwest. I grew up here. I like the flat grassland, plains, whatever. I think Minnesota is an OG Midwest state, okay? You know, I enjoy living here. I enjoy Minnesota. Again, I just love the Midwestern landscape, you know. There are pros and cons to living here, but yeah, I'm gonna say, you know, basically I think it's perfect. I love the cities, you know, St. Paul and Minneapolis right here next door. I like how they kind of have their own thing going on, even though they're right next to each other. But yeah, there's a lot of jobs, you know, up here, a lot of variety. Yeah, you can definitely make a good life out here. There's a lot to do out here. You know, I love, you know, people call it going up north. You can go camping. There's lots of lakes. You can go boating and that type of thing. So yeah, we don't have the most outdoorsy thing going on. We don't have the biggest cities or whatever. But I do think Minnesota has a lot to offer. There's a variety of things going on. The people aren't that open. It's not easy to make friends, but I'm a loner anyway, so what doesn't matter to me. So yeah, I think I would rate Minnesota a 9 out of 10. That's just how I feel. I might be biased, but you know, growing up here, living here, I have come to love Minnesota. So yeah, that's how I feel.